Attention everybody, the views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of Acts Ministry, Acts Media Group, and or their affiliate and subordinate ministries and or nonprofits. It's that time again. After long last, it's the happy hour with your host, Dr. Paul, and his lovely wife, Miss Nancy Collins. See what kind of fun we have in store for you today. Take it away, Dr. Paul.
Hello, everybody. Friday, April 24th. Is that right? Anyway, and that's the year 2020. Now, that's because I know that some of you will be watching this on a delayed basis, even though we are live, because we are alive, and this is a live show.
Yeah, we're not dead.
We're not dead. And let me show you something, folks. This is how we looked coming into the studio.
Pull it over your nose.
Just like we were going to hold the place up. But now that we're in the studio, take that off. But also have the handy-dandy little hand thing here to make sure our hands stay clean. We are thankful to be able to be with you. Some of you are...
Thoroughly sanitized.
Yes, Matt has assured us everything is thoroughly sanitized. In fact, they do it after every show. Now, this is the happy hour. We're going to deal with some serious stuff and some interesting stuff. But because it is the happy hour, I have to say hello to Shirley Simpson, my first secretary in St. Joe, Missouri, and Judy Nickel, whose husband helped us start Acts Ministry almost 27 years ago. She's down in Texas. And Galen Garrett, a wonderful friend, formerly of Springfield. Now she's down in the Dallas Metroplex area. Hello to Jerry Chamberlain, my teenage church member from years ago, who's now a retired school administrator and lives over in Chesterfield, Missouri. And hello to all the other friends in St. Joe area, in Northeast Missouri, and Springfield, and the Kansas City area, et cetera, and in Branson.
Yep.
Oh, the Blackwoods. Blackwoods, you were terrific on the Power Hour yesterday morning. What a show. And a lot of folks were watching, and I know it received rave reviews. So R.W. and Donna Blackwood, God richly bless you and all of your wonderful family there in the Branson area. And Donna, your mama down in Texas too, okay? Now, having said that, of course, some of the Blackwood family lives in Ozark, south of Springfield. Let me identify where we are. We're in Springfield, Missouri, which means we're in the southwest corner almost of the state of Missouri, which is in the middle of the United States, which is in the middle of the world, and that's why I call my adopted city Springburg, USA. It's my fond rendition of how to talk about Springfield. Now, because it is the happy hour, I wanted to tell you that there are, Nancy, some commercials that have been on television that have been interesting over the years. I'll not identify businesses, but some of you from this area, this viewing area, you may recognize these. And those of you, whether you're in the United States, elsewhere, or in Germany, or Turkey, or France, or South America, etc., you'll get the idea. There was a well-known commercial for a while about a business that was located on the corner of East Sunshine and Highway 65 here in Springburg, USA. And he would end up by saying, we are where it's always sunshine and 65. How about that? A little play on things. Or there was a guy that had a business here in Springburg, USA. For years, you would see him on TV several times a day. He'd jump up in the air, throw his hands up like a referee at a football game, and he'd say, what a place. Remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do you also remember the guy that couldn't quite do that? I think he was too old to jump, but he'd raise his hands and say, that's it. Remember him?
Yeah.
And then how about the guys from a little town west of us here, west of Springburg, USA, and the two guys would stand side by side and throw their hands out like that and point, and say, nobody beats our deal. Remember that
yeah,
one?
I sure do.
Okay. How about the guy who says, we're a really big store with lots of stuff? And then he says, we service what we sell at all of our locations. And he gives the locations. And he says, you'll like the way we do business. Tell a friend. So I have adopted that somewhat for our church. And First Acts Church, we have more than one location. We're a little bitty church with a lot of big stuff. And you'll like the way we do ministry. So tell a friend. How about
Yeah,
that?
that's right.
Okay, then there's one that's currently being seen a lot,
wow.
where a guy says, what would you rather have, a coffee mug or $10,000? And I'm thinking, duh. Unless that coffee mug is gold and full of gold coins, I'll take the $10,000. Well, Axe Media Group doesn't have a gold cup. In fact, Axe Media Group, most of the time, doesn't have a cup. And so Axe Media Group, which is a department of Axe Ministry, can always use a few more friends, friends who participate. The idea of having partners, that's worn out. Calling them supporters, no, that's worn out. I prefer to call you friends. Friends who not only watch these shows, but who go online to axemediagroup.com and press the donate button and do something every month. Because Axe Ministry is truly international, runs on a very small budget, and if it wasn't for volunteers, we wouldn't be able to do what we do, and we need people that aren't just volunteers, because there, some things you have to pay for. And we need to upgrade some equipment and need to increase the equipment, all that kind of thing. But right now is the best time I can think of to tell you, go to axemediagroup.com, find that donate button and push the button, and it will take your credit card via PayPal. It's very simple, nothing to it. Okay, Nancy, this is old Dr. Paul, and this is my sweet little Miss Nancy, my wife, and I want to take a few minutes here to give people some information. Nancy spent some of her most formative years as a child in Saudi Arabia, and because the Saudis right now and the Russians are putting a lot of oil on the market so that we have oil tankers full of oil setting offshore, oil prices per gallon right now are minus, so they're not producing, putting a pinch on a major part of the economic engine of the United States of America. Nancy knows Saudi Arabia better than I do, so tell us a little bit about it, Nancy.
You've never been there.
Well, no, I've never been there. Tell us a little bit, and we're going to do this in bits and pieces so that we don't give them the whole story all at one time. Okay?
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, I've got a map here, and I had to get a map out because looking at myself from the outside looking in, it's like, Nancy Collins, you were so little, you didn't know things, or you don't know things, you weren't taking everything into account. So there's things I have to look at pictures to remember. And I've got a whole map here of Saudi Arabia, and it goes over all of the highways. It's like, whoever thought of highways way back in 1952 or 54. I guess it was 54 when I went over there with Mama and my sister.
I didn't know you in those days.
I know, but Daddy went over there when it was 1952, and that's when they had just started, I guess.
Aramco.
Aramco.
Arab American Oil Company. Well,
No, it's Arabian American Oil Company.
Okay.
It was then,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
now it's Saudi Aramco.
Right.
Yeah. And looking here, and I thought we were way out in the middle of Saudi Arabia, which would be smack dab here on this map. Well, it's just a bare hair, really, Abqaiq is just a bare hair into the desert off the coast of the Arabian Gulf. I, and I,
Now tell me, what was what would you live in Saudi
oh,
Arabia?
we had I thought a really nice house. It was all these big concrete blocks that you see people build walls and everything. Those were that was the house that we lived in Arabia. Boy, it was nice. Had a big living room, a galley type kitchen. It had 2 bedrooms, had a bathroom, and it had a huge air conditioner. Everything was air conditioned because in the summertime it could be 120 degrees in the outside, and when they would redo the streets and the highways, it was so hot that the asphalt would bubble. It was just like you could almost see it bubbling. It was so hot. But they were very nice inside, all nice, everything.
Would
Just,
this be now? Your dad was a draftsman
yep, he was a draftsman.
for a power plant. Worked in a power plant that serviced that power plant belonged to Arabian American Oil Company.
No,
Did not.
no, he was a draftsman. He worked for Texas Power and Light.
Oh, okay,
in
right.
Trinidad, Texas, and he got a paper, the Dallas Morning News, and I guess that their Arabian American Oil Company was advertising, so he took him up on it, and he went over there for 2 years before my sister and my and Mama got to go. We went by ourselves. That's like, oh my goodness gracious, little kids. We had never been outside of probably Trinidad hardly.
And Trinidad is a small town.
Yeah, that's Trinidad, Texas, you guys.
I mean, it's so small, you can drive through it in the amount of time it takes to sneeze.
Yeah,
It's
that's
small.
right.
But it's on the Trinity River.
Yeah, that's why there was Texas Power and Light Company.
And by the way, Nancy's dad, his name was Elwood, but because his last name was Patrick, everybody called him Pat. And Pat was a precious guy. Her mom's name was Willie, but they called her Billy, and she was a school teacher. Well, Pat was like a lot of people back in those days, had very limited education. When he moved to Dallas as a really young man, he was a doorman at a hotel. Wore a little uniform, went out, opened car doors, and one day he opened the car door for somebody that was in a position to say, that young man has a work ethic. I think I'll hire him or recommend him. So he ended up with Texas Power and Light.
Yeah, that's right.
And he, T&P, Texas Power and Light, TPL, they fondly referred to it as Texas Pole and Lantern. Remember
yeah,
that?
Yes.
But anyway, he saw the ad in the Dallas Morning News, which remained his favorite newspaper until the day he died.
Yeah.
And the ad was for
A draftsman.
a draftsman and in Saudi Arabia to work for Texas Pole and Lantern in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, you might say that.
You might say, so off he went.
Yeah.
And then Nancy and her sister and her mom, 2 years later, they go and settle in. Now, this house that you lived in, was it like in an American compound? Or?
Yes. Oh, glad you brought that up. Yes. All the Americans were in a compound, and it wasn't like a compound with a wire fence or anything like that. It was just an area where we had all the houses, and we had streets and lights and all of that. But then we had what we called the surf house because we were smack dab on the Arabian Gulf. Oh, it was really nice. You talk about a nice sandy beach and everything else. And we had the movie theater that doubled as the church that we went to. And then really right across the street from the surf house and the movie theater was the school. And it went from grades 1 through 9.
And your mom taught school,
Yeah,
right?
she sure did.
And your mom was a graduate of, she was a graduate of what, North Texas State?
I think something like that.
Yeah, North Texas, which is quite a prominent Texas university now,
Yeah.
by the way. They have a great music program. In fact, one of my grandsons worked on his master's there in music many years ago. Anyway, now then we have you.
Oh, but I gotta tell, this is so bad for me and I'll say my butt, because getting ready to go to Arabia, oh dear, I never knew there was so many different kinds of shots, and we'd end up.
Oh, you were talking about your buttocks?
Yes, yes.
The show's degenerating, folks. Hang on.
I remember going to the doctor's office. Oh man, and I got all my shots in the butt. No, it wasn't just all at the same time. That might have been okay. But I guess you had 6 or 8 shots that you had to get before you even started to go to Arabia. Oh, and I was such a kid.
Well, you were a kid. You were
I know.
7 years old.
I know, but they had to chase me around the doctor's office just to grab a hold of me.
Can you see? Nancy was always little. She's outrunning the doctor in his office. He's got a needle in his hand trying to catch her because she's protecting her buttocks.
Oh, that was terrible. But then, that wasn't the last of the shots. At least we got them all done. And of course, before we had to get passports and all of that kind of stuff. And then you get over to Arabia, and you end up having to get, I think it was cholera shots every 3 months. And you'd come out of there, oh gosh, oh Lord. And you'd keep your arm because it hurt so bad to move it. And then you ended up having to get, let's see, there was cholera and typhoid, typhus, yellow fever, and I don't know how many others. Those are the bad ones that I can. Yes.
Those
all
were
of
the big needles.
Yeah.
Tetanus ones.
Oh, by the way, I don't care what any viewer or listener thinks about this. Well, I care. But however, there are some folks that may not like a voice off camera. I like a voice off camera. I mean, it works. It literally works, Matt, to have a voice from off camera. So I'm glad that Matthew Dillon Pearson, the marshal of this little town, Springburg, USA, portion in this Plaza Towers, is here and loaded, ready.
I'm always, I just can't keep my mouth shut, so it's good to have a microphone there.
That's right. That's right. Might as well make
Otherwise,
use.
they just hear this.
Might as well make use of it.
Yeah, yeah.
By the way, you used the word a while ago, stuff, and made me think. When I was teaching college classes, I had students. They had 2 words they used and overused. One of them was like. It was like, like stuff,
Yeah.
and the stuff was like stuff. They couldn't talk without those 2 words, like and stuff. All right, now then, let's come back to something that's on the desk.
Yes.
What did you bring from our fireplace mantle?
Okay, I brought what my dad, oh man, he hand carried this through customs. This is a sand rose. And it came
Sand rose.
Sand rose.
Okay.
And in Arabia, that's all there is sand. There may be less of it because they've got modern asphalt type highways, and they're really, really nice.
But they're built on sand.
They're built on sand. And when you have shamals, which is huge, terrible sandstorms, it's like you see a huge dark cloud coming, not in the sky. It goes all the way up to the sky where you can't see the sky anymore, and it's coming at you. That's a shamal. And boy, and how all that kind of pressure and everything else over time. I don't know how long it took for sand and the rain that we did have at times to form this sand rose. And I've got some smaller ones at home, but that's gorgeous because that's very, very, that's all nature.
It's
that
beautiful.
did that.
It's
Yeah.
I call it a sand sculpture,
Yeah,
but that one happens to be the sand rose.
yeah, that's what Daddy called them.
Right. Now then, let's go back to the American compound
Oh,
and the movie theater and the bowling alley.
oh yeah, oh, the bowling alley.
Yeah.
Oh, it seemed like all I did, and movies cost 25 cents. And there was an age limit, but I looked so young, even when I was, I don't know what age.
You were so small.
I was getting in for still 25 cents, and I wasn't telling anybody.
This
And,
is honest little Miss Nancy.
and then in the
You
same
probably still get that discount.
Probably.
and in the same place where we had the movie theater, we had church. We no buildings at all to
Right.
show it was a church. We just know that was church, and we always had a non-denominational, I'll say, preacher.
Well,
And oh, come to think of it, thank you, Jesus. We had Sunday school in, I think, the school building right across the
that's
street.
what I was thinking.
Yeah,
Right. Hmm.
yeah, sure enough. And then in the serve house, as we called it, it was really, really, really nice. It had a very, very fine dining area where it looks like you could dress up and go and eat a really nice humdinger meal, or you had a place where it's like you're going into McDonald's and you could have hamburgers.
Yes. Now, let me tell you, folks.
Yeah.
Nancy insists that a hamburger be not just well done, but definitely
No pink.
very well done. We jokingly call them cremated, but they haven't turned to dust yet. But they have to be very well done. And so when we see some of these cooking shows on television and things are pink on the inside,
Or they're red and
Uh-huh.
runny, like it's still.
well, one guy the other day was a judge, and he said that the beef that he had on his plate, that its heart was still beating. that's how rare it was. There's such a thing as rare, and then there's also raw. And rare is just one step away from being raw, really.
Yeah.
But anyway, Nancy likes hamburgers and cheeseburgers that are well done, and crispy French fries.
Yeah.
And
And my poor mom, we'd go in there to the serve house and have something to eat, and we ate out a lot. Mama fixed good meals at home every day, but I look back and it's like, Lord, I think we ate out all the time. And I don't remember how much a hamburger cost, or the French fries, or whatever, or the meal in that fine looking dining room. But it was always,
did you have to send the hamburger back a few times?
yeah. And I bet my mom, bless her heart, she probably went out of her mind. And those poor guys in there, and a lot of them were Arabs that were in there taking care of us. And I bet they were out of their mind too. Oh, here she comes again.
I wonder, looking back now, Nancy, on all the years we've been together and all the stories I've heard about Saudi Arabia and your experiences there, what it would have cost in those days to get American-style food into an Arab nation that was basically a nomadic nation until they discovered oil.
Yeah.
And they built cities, but they didn't have grazing land for cattle, so all that had to be brought in if you were going to eat beef. Anyway, let's come back to Saudi Arabia again here in a little bit. If you get an opportunity, see if you can find approximately what the population is. Maybe your book will tell you. While she's doing that, I want to talk a little bit about some reasons why this coronavirus is worthy of our attention. As you noticed early in the show, Nancy and I, we have our mask and we have our hand cleaner, and we've been staying in with the exception of groceries
And doctor's appointments.
and doctor's appointments and pharmacy pickups. If I'm with her, I wear a mask. I put it on in the garage, and I keep it on, even though I stay in the car, because having had some medical procedures the last 2 weeks ago, and my age, I'm considered high risk. So I stay in the car and wear the mask, and she wears gloves and a mask and takes care of the groceries and so forth. And So we've been honoring this, and some of you are privy to this and others aren't. Only a few are privy to this. But during the 2 weeks that we've been off the air live, because for the last 2 Fridays, if you've seen the happy hour, it's been one recorded at a prior date. This one's live. But during those two weeks, I didn't shave. And most people who know me know I'm not a fan of facial hair. So I proved to myself why I'm not a fan, because I let my beard grow totally for 2 weeks, and I was so glad when the 2 weeks were up and I shaved yesterday morning. And what a chore that turned out to be, trying to get all that hair off my face. It was really quite a task. But for those who are saying, oh, shucky darn, wish I had seen old Dr. Paul with his beard, we have pictures. And they're not for general publication, I can assure you. But we do have a set of pictures of old Dr. Paul and his beard. Probably the last time that I'll ever grow a beard unless there's some special occasion. Now, the coronavirus was responsible for that. And until we are fully released, we will be maintaining a stay-at-home policy. And when we have to be out, we will maintain social distancing. It is my opinion, just my opinion, that the landscape of American society has been forever changed because of the coronavirus. Now, I understand some of you watching and listening, you're on Facebook and you see the postings that there are those who don't believe that this is real. Some don't believe it's any more serious than some of the flu. But I think about this. I think about people were not conscious of the flu until 1917 or 18. And my dad was born in 1899, in November of 1899. So he was like 17 or 18 years old when the great flu hit, the great Spanish influenza. Mm-hmm. And it killed a lot of people. But because there was no TV, really no radio, my dad probably did not know that flu happened. But it did happen, and it killed hundreds of thousands of people. Now, since then, we've sort of grown accustomed to the fact that the flu season comes along, and so many people have a vaccine against the latest strain or variety of influenza. COVID-19 is not the flu. It's another strain of something so tiny you cannot see it with the naked eye, and yet, whether you believe it's serious or not, most of the world is taking it serious, and most of the world is practicing some type of shutdown procedure, etc. Now, folks, I'm not here to be controversial about this at all. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. I'm just telling you, this is not the flu. But because we have communication now, whatever this thing is, we know about it. And whatever it is, apparently it does make people sick, and it has killed a lot of people. And chances are there's more death to come. But some of the things that it's caused has been a change in the way we do business and the way we seek to satisfy our pleasure bug. So I think, personally, that the social landscape of America and perhaps the world is forever changed because of the coronavirus. How is this going to affect our food supply? Well, it's already affected it because there are places where on grocery shelves there are some vacant spots. It has affected our food supply, and that there's some folks who can't get out to the grocery store. So we have some volunteer groups delivering groceries, maintaining social distancing. you all know all of this stuff. So, yes, it has affected our food supply. It's affected all of our entertainment. Movie theaters are closed. Sports stadiums are shut down. They did the NFL draft last night by virtual live streaming out of the basement of the football commissioner's home, announcing the draft choices. And that's different. So a lot of things have changed. Now, in the midst of all this, we do have an abundant supply of doomsday preachers. Boy, 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 they can show up on every television set. We used to say back in the old days before TV, they'd show up on every street corner. Now they show up in every family room, every living room, and they show up on every smartphone. Doomsday preachers. It's caused in the fundamentalist Christian world and the evangelical Christian world, the Pentecostal Christian world, the charismatic Christian world, maybe among some others, a real uptick in the interest in Bible prophecy. All of a sudden, prophecy has become popular. So, we have some that are busy preaching from Matthew chapter 24, where Jesus talked about the destruction of the temple in the end times. The same story is told in Mark 13. They don't bother to preach from that one because it's shorter. and they like the longer version, I guess. Now, my evangelical friends listening to me, especially you preachers, be patient with old Dr. Paul. After all, I just went through a university, and then I went through 90 graduate hours of a graduate seminary, highly accredited, and I struggled my way through and barely earned a doctorate in psychology. Big deal. Anyway, be patient with old Dr. Paul, because just because you like a certain way of looking at Bible prophecy and I don't strike the chord that you like, be patient, because there's a whole lot of chords being played out there. So Matthew 24 is very popular. Same scripture, same story, but different passage in Mark 13, not so popular because it's shorter. How about Luke 22? Same story in Luke 22, but it's told in a little different fashion. So you have three versions of the prophecies of Jesus, but there is a popular way of interpreting all that. Now, they try to tie all this into the book of the Revelation, Nancy. For those of you who may not be Christian or not acquainted with your Bible, it's the last book in the Bible. It's the book of the Revelation of St. John the Divine, the book of Revelation. And it's considered a prophetic book, tied into an Old Testament book, especially the book of Daniel. But Revelation, they tie it in with Daniel, and they tie it in with Matthew chapter 24. Now, this is not a preaching show, and it's never been a Bible lesson show, but this is relevant to the coronavirus and the doomsday preachers. So hang on. There are three different approaches to interpreting the book of the Revelation. And those of you who don't have time to write this down, catch the rerun and make some notes on it. There's the futuristic. And these are the people we call dispensationalists. In other words, a dispensation be 1,000 years. So the first dispensation was the first 1,000 years after the resurrection, or after the birth of Jesus. Second, this was the second 1,000, so forth. So now we're in the seventh dispensation. Now, the dispensationalists, that's the popular view on interpreting the book of the Revelation. That view, it came about in the 1500s by a Catholic priest who was defending the papacy, not only as the head, someone being the head of the church, but also was a king over lots of countries. And Martin Luther posed a little threat to all of that, so along came futuristic interpretation of the book of the Revelation and Matthew 24. about the same time, someone else of the Catholic faith had a different notion, and they're called preterism, which said all this stuff had already happened. The whole book of Revelation and Matthew 24, all of it had already happened. So this is a report after the fact. They have a little problem with one part of their position, however, about, the end of the world, because the end of the world hadn't happened yet. But the preterist position is still very popular in certain areas. Then finally, there's the historicist. Historicism, it's called. And it's one that says that Revelation is full of symbols. It's all very symbolic, but it follows a course in history. And if you study history, you will find all of these things in the book of the Revelation happening historically up to, and remember I told you this, up to chapter 18, which the historicists are saying is probably where we are now in history, chapter 18. I think we're on the verge of it. I don't think we're really in it. I think we're on the verge of it. So that means you have 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22, the last 5 chapters of the book of the Revelation, still to be played out. But if we are in chapter 18, then there's this, it's playing out, then there's 4 after that. So anyway, it doesn't take long to read those. Read them sometime and read them with an open mind. Now, I don't want to lose you here, but hang on. Somewhere in chapter 18, they talk about a city called Babylon. Now, Babylon still exists today. It's in present-day Iraq, which at one time was a part of the Persian Empire, which at one time was a part of the Babylonian Empire, and it was so named because of the city of Babylon and has one of the wonders of the world, the Hanging Gardens, etc. Babylon still exists. But in the book of the Revelation, they talk about a city called Babylon. Now, the historicist says this is symbolic. It's not really the city of Babylon, but it talks about even the merchants at sea and all the people that deal in economics and all the things of the world. Babylon comes down, falls, and they say, "Oh, mighty Babylon, how you have fallen." And they weep over the fall of Babylon. Now, I have an opinion. I do not believe that Babylon is the city of Babylon, nor my dispensationalist friends do I believe it's Rome. I believe it's a system. Mm-hmm. And it's a system, yes, it does say and that it's a city on 7 hills. That's why people think it's Rome, because Rome was built on 7 hills, and then they want to narrow it down to the Vatican as a part of Rome. No, it's a system. And what are the 7 hills then? Well, let's think about the things where men go up to worship. On a hill, you go up to worship. Religion. Religion's falling. Economics. Men go up the hill to worship money. I'm going to tell you about money in a little bit. Money's fallen down. Science. Are they ever in a scramble right now, scientifically, over the coronavirus and other things? Science. Think about all the confusion. I could do a whole show on that. Education. Oh, how we've worshipped education. All the universities in this country are shut down. The public school system shut down. Oh, mighty Babylon, how you have fallen. How about entertainment? Movie theaters closed, Hollywood shut down. I remember hearing an old Pentecostal preacher years ago. We were trying to bring a Billy Graham film to this small town, and we had a holiness preacher. He said, holiness, truthfully, he was a Nazarene, and they have a holiness doctrine. He said, well, our people don't go to movies. Times have changed. He said, our people don't go to movies, so I can't vote to have this Billy Graham movie come to town. It's going to be in a movie theater. This old Pentecostal preacher who was an independent, he said, well, you know, and his grammar wasn't really good. Us Pentecostals prayed Hollywood shut, but we brought it into our homes in a thing called a television. So my people will show up and watch a Billy Graham film in that picture show house, and they did. But times have changed. The movie theaters are closed. The sports theaters are closed. Entertainment. O mighty Babylon, how you have fallen. Materialism. We go up the hill to materialism. We used to say, well, so-and-so's got this or that or whatever, we need it. On television, they advertise things like, because someone else has it, you have to have it. In fact, they tell us we're entitled. We deserve it. Oh. Joe Namath, former quarterback for the New York Jets, I get a kick out of his commercial. You deserve it. He says, they told me, here, all the benefits I deserve. Multimillionaire Broadway Joe. Yeah, you deserve benefits. Hello, Joe Namath, wherever you are. I hope you're watching. You were a hero, and you're still unique. You're with your white tennis shoes when you played football as a professional. There was a young quarterback out in Kansas at KU. He started wearing white tennis shoes to play in quarterback for KU because Joe Namath wore white tennis shoes. Yeah, he was Broadway Joe. Anyway, still is, I guess. But materialism, what I deserve. Isn't it interesting that out of the 10 Commandments, the one that gets the least amount of attention is number 10. Thou shalt not covet. Whoa. The one that gets overlooked is the one upon which materialism is built. So we go up the hill to worship materialism. I know there are women who worship the house they're in, or the countertops in their house. And men, even men who say, oh, I love that kitchen. Really? What a misuse of the word love. Or, oh, I love this master bedroom. Ooh, I love that king-size bed. Ooh, I love. What a misuse of the word love. See, it's covetousness. We want it. And it's materialism. Now, oh, wow. O mighty Babylon, how you have fallen. Not very many people taking tours of new homes these days. Now they'll bring a new car by your house to show it to you. O mighty Babylon, how you've fallen. Culturalism. I mentioned earlier that the 2 weeks that we were off, I grew a beard. That's quite a cultural thing. You know, beards and tattoos are cultural. Ear piercings. Nancy's wearing pierced earrings. All those are cultural things. There was a time when you could almost predict the stock market by the length of women's skirts. That's how much power the fashion market had. I remember when I was a kid, if they raised the women's skirts like 2 inches for that season, the stock market would go up. If they lowered them, the stock market went down. That's how culturally in tune we are. And it's called, sometimes we talk about popular culture. I urge you, please, be patient with this old preacher, and let's shorten that to pop cult. Do you realize the word cult is a shortened version of culture? And yet we have people who have worshipped popular culture who are out after a church and say it's a cult, out after a religious movement saying it's a cult, when they're in a cult. They're in a cult because it's called popular culture. O mighty Babylon, how you have fallen. Weeping and wailing across the land, around the world. So is the coronavirus real? Well, the effects of it are quite real, to say the least. Now, it's the happy hour, so we want to stay happy. Nancy, take about 3 minutes and tell us something more about Saudi Arabia. Something good. I'll tell you this about her. Don't ever challenge her to bowling, because she will probably
good bowler?
beat you. Oh, that's all they did for bowling and movies. That was their entertainment in
Last
Saudi
time I
Arabia.
went bowling, I slipped and fell on my backside, and everybody laughed.
Well, I didn't do that, but they laughed anyway. Gutter balls are funny.
You know, hey, they are, and they happen a lot.
They happen a lot to us, but not to this little old lady here. You should see the way
Now I want to go bowling with Nancy.
You ought to see the way she delivers the ball. That leg comes out behind you. You know that motion?
Yeah, and then you dip the leg behind you.
Oh, yeah. She does it all.
Yeah,
And
I do that, and it doesn't help me any.
And then she's a little woman, 4'11", and she fibs a little bit and says she's
Dynamite comes in
5
small
feet.
packages, Dr. Paul.
5 feet and 100 pounds soaking wet. And yet she picks up this big bowling ball and she delivers it with all the grace of a bowling goddess. All right. Something
Little
else about
G.
something about Saudi Arabia.
Oh yeah, this is you guys will love this. Remember the Khobar bombings? Well, we would go to Al Khobar, and that was outside of Dhahran, and that's where you always flew into in order to go to Abqaiq, where we were for several years, and then to Ras Tanura, which was a huge oil refinery. That's where they offloaded the crude oil into those big tankers. But anyway, Khobar, I would go Khobar to shop. And Khobar was just like in some of these old-time pictures that you might see. They were all like sand-colored and real gnarly, as somebody used to say.
Hillbillies coming out in her, not narrow, but gnarly streets.
Gnarly
Okay.
streets, yeah. And come to find out, oh, this is a big deal. We ended up, when we had Coca-Cola in Dhahran, we'd go to the airport and they had a Coca-Cola machine. That was a big, big deal because we couldn't get Cokes at all. And then Coca-Cola came to Al Khobar, probably because the Arabs found out we liked Coca-Cola. So there was one store in that whole Al Khobar that I remember, and we would go there and we could just sit and we could drink that Coca-Cola in those little bottles. That was a big, big deal.
I want all of you to know that for the next few weeks, whatever, I intend for Nancy to do a segment on Saudi Arabia, because there's a whole lot more to tell.
Yeah.
And she'll be remembering her experiences and experiences of her mom and dad and her sister and some of her friends that were in Saudi Arabia, friends that she made there and so forth. So stay tuned to that. In the meantime, a reminder, go to axmediagroup.com, quick and easy. Find that donate button. Easy. Press on it. It's easy to become a friend of the organization that's a friend to the nonprofits. Axe Media Group is a friend to many other nonprofits. So your friendship is what we're looking for. Now, in keeping with that, there is a way for you to send an email, and it's 4321@gmail.com. 4321@gmail.com. What I'd like for you to do.
4321-ACTS.
Oh, excuse me.
4321.
Oh, yeah. 4321-ACTS,
4321-ACTS.
ACTS, at gmail.com. It's a good thing Marshall Dillon's here.
gonna go ahead and also
4321-ACTS, ACTS.
Put up a direct link to be able to go to axmediagroup.com/please-donate. You don't have to do that. You can just go to axmediagroup.com, see all the stuff that we've got on there, including shows from last week and the week before, all the different programs we have, the Realtors Review, and then right there on your right, it says donate now. It's big letters. You can't miss it. You take debit card, credit card, and PayPal, and you can donate as little as $1 or as much as you want. No donation is too small, no donation is too big. And this month, until April 30th, we have a dollar-for-dollar match going on.
Wow.
So double your money, double your giving.
Double your
Until the
money
30th.
and double your friendship.
Okay, Matthew Dillon Pearson.
Yes, ma'am.
Not everybody has a computer or a phone or anything like that. They might have the old kind of phone, and they have to go by slow mail.
A snail mail, they call it.
Snail mail, yeah.
Address, please. Mailing
Uh,
address.
I don't have the address here.
1736
East
Sunshine,
Suite
216.
Suite 216, Springfield, Missouri. Now,
65804.
right. Now, that's 1736 East Sunshine, and it's Suite 216. Springfield, not Springburg, Springfield,
Say.
Missouri, 65804. Write a check, put it in the mail. But another reason
Acts
for
Ministry.
yeah, make the check to Acts Ministry. By the way, another reason why I wanted you to pick up on the email address is I would like for you, watching this show, some of you, all of you for that matter, when you send an email, it'll be received either by Matt or by Dr. Whining, somebody, and mention in the email that you would like to be in touch with old Dr. Paul, and they'll give you my email address, and I'm going to set up a dialogue with you, because there's a whole lot of stuff between the lines that you don't get to see or hear just on the show. It's like a lawyer I knew one time years ago. I lived on a lake up in north central Missouri, and he liked to use my boat and drink my coffee and have my fellowship, but he always charged me for his services, come to think of it. But in the typical lawyer, but in the meantime, he did say something that stuck with me. He said, when you read something, you want to read it from the beginning of the sentence to the end. Then go back and study each word individually. Then, he said, when you think you've got it, read it backwards and study each word backwards individually. Now, when you think you've got it, he said, lift up the sentence and look under it, see what's there. That's what we want to do with the happy hour and these things that I bring up. So that's why you can go to 4321acts@gmail.com, and if you tell them you want old Dr. Paul, you want to make contact, they'll get you in contact with me. They'll let me know, and I'll send you an email, and we'll raise the sentence up and look under it. How's that? Okay, Nancy, we're down getting close to time here, really close. But right now, we do know that Saudi Arabia and Russia, in particular, are putting a squeeze on our oil industry. We know that. We also know that Iran recently launched a rocket with a satellite that is capable of military application, and that has not set very well with the United States or other people in the world. We also know that some Iranian gunboats, those are small ships like yachts that are armored. They've been harassing American military vessels. And our president, Donald John Trump, day before yesterday, gave word to the military, blow them out of the water. If they come near our ships, they will be sunk. So there's a lot happening in the world, and I'd like for you to stay in touch through 4321acts@gmail.com and be a friend of Acts Ministry and do it regularly, every month. You realize there's a whole bunch of TV commercials now asking for $19 a month. That's because 19 sounds a lot cheaper than 20, a lot less. I'm gonna say whatever, like Matt, whatever you send, but why don't you target $1 a day? See if you can come up with it. What if it just ends up being 90 cents a day? That's all right.
You know, if every one of our listeners and viewers donated just $1, that'd be enough to cover our operational costs for the month. As far as like,
and as an old buddy of mine whose funeral I had several months ago used to say, I hope to shout. Okay, here's some money news for you. We were late getting on the air, so Matt's cutting us a little slack here. This is stuff that I've told you before, but now it's going to be even more so because of the coronavirus. Way back before the coronavirus, I gave you some statistics. 57% of the adults in the United States can't write a check for $1,000. 57%. That's over half of our adults. 44% can't write a check for $400. 22% can't pay their monthly bills. And 40% of college graduates owe student loans. Now let's back up a little bit. Now, because of the coronavirus, 57% can't write a check for $1,000. That may be 80%. 44% can't write a check for $400. That may be 70%. 22% can't pay their monthly bills. That may be 90%. 40% of college grads owe student loans. Yeah, and that's not getting any better. 50%, back when I took these statistics down, of the earning public earned less than $30,000 a year. That's gone way up because of the unemployment thing that's going on with coronavirus. Back then, 43% struggled to pay the minimum charge on a credit card every month. Guess what? That's gone way up now, much higher. 33% back then hated their jobs. Now, maybe a lot more people love their jobs now that they don't have them. Just think about that. 77% don't like their jobs. Whoa. Some people that still have their job, they're liking it better all the time because they can go to work. 73% die in debt. Guess what? That number is bigger. And there are 1.2 billion credit cards that were around, that are around now. But years ago, in 1950, the only one around was the Diners Club. And there were like 2,200 of those. Now there's 1.2 billion.
Debt cards.
They're debt cards. Remember my teaching on that.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So I know that the time is basically shot, but dear ones, let's all try to take some hope in the midst of all of this. There's a lot of good news coming up that Nancy will have, interesting stuff about the coronavirus, about Saudi Arabia. I'll have some updated news, hopefully good news about the coronavirus. But in it all and through it all, even though it's not a preaching show, remember what old Dr. Paul said about Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 22, the book of Daniel, and Revelation chapter 18, all the way through the end. And in the meantime, hold on to Matthew 11, 28 through 30. The words of the greatest teacher who ever lived or who will ever live, who ever lives. He is alive.
Right.
Come to me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. I've just quoted Jesus of Nazareth, who is Jesus the Christ. Well, our time is gone and well past. We'll see you next Friday. Till then, Dr. Paul and Miss Nancy, stay blessed.